Alright, we're going to do a philosophical rant. We're going to try and make it short and sweet because that increases the probability of paying attention to the end. Okay. We're going to talk about Hegelian dialectics and how the New Age movement, associated cults that misprogram the Blue Crystal Grid and associated with the AI transhuman agenda have misinterpreted Hegelian dialectics and Jungian psychology and what that might mean for you, as well as some of the consequences that might have when you reach the Ezekiel stage and potential and starting encountering those particular forces that some people refer to as the gatekeepers, which actually aren't necessarily what they say they are. So, okay, as you might have noticed, this physical body is a female and is not of a lot of material wealth and definitely not particularly attractive. But if you disagree, feel free to comment in the comments and receive an ascorbic remark back about how that's superficial and doesn't matter anyway. Okay, okay, so. Without further ado, okay, Hegelian dialectics. Okay, that's a complicated philosophical discussion to which there isn't a lot of information to provide, except to say that Hegel was known as saying the phrase thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. He was not the first person to come up with that. He actually got the idea from Soren Kierkegaard. So let's go back a step. What Soren Kierkegaard was really saying there, so we take Hegel out of the equation, take Marx out of the equation, take Nietzsche out of the equation, take all the ones that came after Kierkegaard out of the equation, or go back to Kierkegaard. Soren Kierkegaard, here we go. We're back to Holland again, are we? No. This one is on the Danish. Okay, so Soren Kierkegaard, and not present tense Danish or whatever, okay? This is way back when in the 1800s, okay? Early 1800s. So Soren Kierkegaard was, we're going to give some love to a deceased professor when we say that. We won't say who in case that university gets embarrassed, because you know they've still got the style over substance frickin' administration as institutions tend to have, although their lecturers are quite nice. Anyway, so Soren Kierkegaard, what was it? This is a bit of a nod to someone that knows in the know already. He was a good bloke. That's all you need to know. Anyway, so Soren Kierkegaard was a man in the early 1800s who lived in Denmark or Copenhagen, and he was it was long before the Nazis showed up, and then of course left quickly because the Danish didn't like it very much, and then so what happened was he was a shy person who had the hots for his neighbour. So this Soren Kierkegaard is the story of the iterations of love thy neighbour and how it might come out philosophically. Okay, he had this really beautiful neighbour that he used to lovingly look out the window at and just fantasize about all the time. Like he thought she was just the best. Oh, just a hot chick. Like he really liked her. And he was Mr. Shy. Wasn't good at talk to women. In fact, he was kind of an incel. Soren Kierkegaard was the first incel. Okay, yeah. Soren Kierkegaard was the first documented incel of the Industrial Revolution. Okay, and and he used to look out the window at his hot neighbour. Oh, he thought she was so hot. And then, well, he never had the guts to ask her out. So he sat in his house and he cried and he had got depressed and pretending she didn't like him and wrote a bunch of philosophical treatises on depression and all kinds of things like that. And then he wrote a philosophical treatise on the consequences of what happened when she gave up on waiting for him to ask her out, because it turned out she had a crush on him. As luck would have it, she had a crush on him and he just didn't have the guts to ask her out, right? And anyway, she's got to marry some governor guy who went to the Caribbean or something like that. And so there was letters going back and forth between them, you know, because obviously, you know, she had the guts to talk to him after she already had a different bloke with her. You know, maybe he was letting off the creepy vibe, you know, because he was the looking out the window going, oh, she's so hot. Ew, Soren's creepy. No, Soren wasn't. Soren was just shy, actually. But anyway, it would have looked creepy. Anyway, she had the guts to send him some letters after she married the governor of a guy who got sent to be a governor in the Caribbean, and she was sent off to marry that guy, and he got some letters back, and he wrote a treatise that led to Hegelian dialectics, that led to Nietzsche stuff, that led to Marxist stuff, and basically changed the whole world. And the basic principle was directly ripped off by Hegel, and it goes like, with his thesis, antithesis, and synthesis thing, and it goes like this. Well, when people get accustomed to their worldview, because everyone in their environment has it, and they've never heard of a different one, they might go to a different country, or somewhere completely different from the place that they're used to, and they'll see things that they're just, wow, it's so different. The culture there is so different, the food's different, the language different, the attitudes are different, the environment's different, the weather's different, the clothes are different, everything's different. And it's a shock to their system, because they've got all this culture behind them from where they came from, where it's just like that. It's so normal where they came from. It was just all there was. It was the whole world. That's just how things were. Things couldn't possibly be any different until they went there. And it was absolutely not the same. And so when people go through that culture shock phase, okay, it's roughly akin to antithesis, because there are many things that seem almost exactly the opposite to what they're accustomed to, yet aren't really, because basic principles that you'll probably find in every culture is don't lie, don't steal, don't rape, don't murder, etc., etc. So, the basic moral compass stuff is there. It's how it's expressed is quite different in each culture and society, but the idea is there. So once they get over the culture shock, those people, when they go back to their home country and they realise, again, like they get the double shock, and they go, well, it really was that different. They sometimes, when they go back to the home country, they go look around, they say, well, you know what, it's not that great. Okay, everything that they thought was normal from their worldview, and fantastic about their worldview, where they came from, maybe wasn't. Maybe there were some great things about it. Maybe there were some things that were not so good about it. Maybe that new culture and society that they encountered was better this way, that way, or that the other way. And maybe it was faulty this way, that way, and the other way too. And so when they go through that, they then do what's called synthesis, where they start cherry picking. So the part from their old culture and society that they thought was good, they will try to keep. Apart from the new society that they discovered, which obviously they didn't create, but those people weren't discovered, they were already there. But from the perspective of the newcomer, for them it was a discovery, right? So they go and they cherry pick from both societies, from both worldviews, and then they try and craft a third way out of it. Okay, and so that was the basis of the idea of what Kierkegaard was talking about. And that came from that man having a crush on his neighbour and never having the guts to ask her out. So the idea of Hegelian dialectics is that Hegel has actually been directly influenced by Kierkegaard's writings and the writings of other philosophers that came before him. So things like Marx and Nietzsche, and yes, other worldviews that led to partially contributed to the movements that led to Hitler, but not Hitler's direct writings as well. So both the far left and the far right in 20th century politics, believe it or not, philosophically has its origins in a man in Copenhagen who didn't have the guts to ask his neighbour out. And how's that for cool? Okay, so well, yeah, that's pretty cool, isn't it? As simple as that. As simple as that. A guy who didn't have the guts to ask his neighbour out, who felt a bit sad when she got married off to the governor that went overseas, and they still maintained a friendship and wrote letters. That's it. A simple story about someone shy has had enormous complicated, like not exclusive, but enormous consequences. Yeah. The man that sat in his house and didn't talk to anyone because he was shy and couldn't ask a girl out. That's pretty impressive, eh? Wow. Wow. It's a good one for the shy people. Yeah, exactly. So, definitely score one for the shy people on that. Yeah, because you could take that more than one way. You don't just have to take it as the oh it's terrible. It's easy. And Kierkegaard did point this out. Some people take it as oh it's terrible. They can't cope. It's too different, and they go into actual shock, and they even might become depressed. But there's other people who go, well, actually, and he knows the people that were more flexible and more open to the idea that both cultures, were perhaps imperfect and yet had something to offer, were people who seemed to cope better than people who just went into deep shock and just wanted nothing to do with whatever new ideas that they encountered. Okay, so without further ado, perhaps one of the things that's happening in the USA at the moment is deep shock. Yeah. I mean, if you have a look at it, this is an incel revolution. Okay, it looks like a fascistic revolution, and is in practice in terms of the ideological underpinnings of people like Donald Trump and Musk. Like if you look at Musk's family testimony and that man's testimony about his ideological background and how he's raised and stuff like that, fascist is the correct term for it, and very much so. Yeah. But actually, what it's really about is the incels. Okay, it's about the deep culture shock that led to the incels in the first place, or people calling themselves incels. So the deep culture shock that those men in particular were going through was the culture shock of this idea that men's roles in society had changed because women's roles in society had changed. Okay, they couldn't cope with the idea that perhaps their particular upbringing, which may have been more patriarchal, did not actually reflect other people's. Because you'll notice that even throughout history, with the patriarchal societies and whatever else, that some families and not others did have an egalitarian ethos when it came to the genders. So even as you had traditional roles like the dad went out to work and mum mopped the floor type of thing, they weren't. The dad was sort of like, well, actually, you're not a kept woman. You have freedom and you have rights. He wasn't actually seeing her as property. So even in a situation where women were legal property, there were men who did not see women as legal property. So there was a distinct difference in the behavioural patterns of each and every man and each and every environment that women encountered in that situation, even as they were being sold off through the institution of marriage as property, in European and associated histories, for that 4,000, 5,000 year period that it happened for. And so that deep shock, the deep shock to those men is that they came from potentially those patriarchal backgrounds where that's normal. Okay, it's not normal for a woman to be in power. It's not normal for a woman to be in charge. It's always got to be the man, and they will do anything to force a situation so it is the man. Okay, because they struggled too much with this idea that that power and authority is a behavior and a role, but it's not a gender. Okay, so power and authority is a role and not a gender. So we'll get into that subject a little bit more now. Power, okay, you'd think power would be the king of Denmark, okay, or the king of Holland or whatever country you're talking about. But actually, if you talk about the way people are influenced, they're ideologically influenced. They're influenced by ideas and attitudes and beliefs. Okay, education is a very big thing that affects people, and knowledge and wisdom. And so with that, propaganda continues to be the most powerful estate of all. So obviously what happened when after Elon Musk got involved in open AI is that he's done what a lot of propagandists have done before, is that he's used the artificial intelligence to make videos suggesting that he had fan zones and that this or that was going on in his life and stuff like that. So he's got this churn mill going on, using what's called the fourth estate or the media to distribute, and this was before he bought Twitter and before X, to distribute the Elon Musk fan shit. Okay, so that Flying Dutchman, okay, so is he a Dutchman or is he South African, Canadian or fucking Yank? Well, he's a Dutchman who was born in South Africa, raised in fucking Canada, and now lives as a Yank. So we'll call him the Flying Dutchman. And not blame the Danish at all, it was a Dutch. Okay, the Flying Dutchman, okay, he's been flying around like a mad fucking chook, and he's got all this propaganda mill churned out, because that propaganda mill, that ideological influence of people, is the estate that has the most influence, more than guns, more than money, more than whether or not you eat or sleep. Okay, your ideas are the biggest power that you have. So when they had those institutions of racism, when they had those institutions of patriarchy, and by the way, the institutions of patriarchy also forced men to go to war as well through conscription. So it wasn't actually in men's best interest. Okay? No, seriously, all those men forced to go to war with PTSD and fucking feeling like goddamn shit. Okay? And not having the choice to live their own lives and stuff like that, being told that they were sex monsters and their job was to beat people up and stuff like that, control all the time, and they weren't allowed to fucking cry. That was not in men's best interests. Okay? It absolutely was not. Okay? It actually belittled the men and made them feel like crap, and was completely unfair. Okay, so the upshot of the feminist stuff is that the male stuff started to come out and say, you know, like with the Cure song, boys don't cry. Well, obviously they do. And so fucking what? Except, well, what upset him? Did someone hurt him? Well, why can't he be afforded the same respect as someone else? So when it comes to the Royal Commission and stuff like that, with the 4,444 people that came forward just for the Catholic shit alone, okay, the vast majority of them were men. You know, like altar boys and stuff like that. Okay? And so it was like, well, hang on a second. Wait a minute. That's like 3,000 male rape victims right there. Isn't the standard rhetoric that women are the victims, that women get raped, women don't rape, women don't do DV, things like that? Well, that's crap. Okay? Most of the time, this is for women who were assaulted by women. It's difficult to comprehend the idea that women are helpless victims, or that men are always perpetrators. Like if you were assaulted by a woman and your father was a wonderful human being who passed the dog test with flying colours. So if you knew what the dog test was, you would know that that's anyone who's good to a dog and is trusted by a dog is someone you can fucking trust. Okay, it's called the dog test. You'll see it everywhere. Okay, dog is a man's best friend. A man who is good to a dog, who is good to his pet, who's good to someone else's pet, who's good to dog, okay, and who is trusted by a dog, you can trust them. You'll see that they are trustworthy in other spheres of life, and they are. Okay, the dog test works. Okay, and because of the long-standing relationship humans have with dogs, that shows the kind of character that they have, the kind of stewardship behaviour that they have. They show respect to an animal that is there for training, that is not considered very bright. Then they will be respectful to others. Their heart is a good heart. And so if you had a father who passed dog tests with flying colours, and you were assaulted by a woman, you would not listen to feminist rhetoric that would say to you that woman is hapless victim and man cannot be victim. You would see Royal Commission and you would see most of the victims were men. And you'd say, well, hang on, why is this rhetoric happening? And the statistical answer is because, unfortunately, yes, when it comes to assault, primarily it is the woman that's the victim and the man that's the instigator. Okay? And unfortunately, that is a true statistic. However, when you look at the statistics, you also need to look that it's just because it's slightly less common for men in other spheres. So institutionally, with that it was the males, but in other situations it's not. So it's context dependent. It's like when a man goes to prison and he gets assaulted in prison, he's more likely to be assaulted there than say he's in a domestic environment, unless he's growing up with a father who's a domestic violence offender, or a mother for that matter. Okay, so it really depends on his circumstances, doesn't it? And also, if you say the apple doesn't fall from the tree, you can get fucked, because some people grew up in horrendous environments but grew up to be very decent people. So what you need to understand there is that culture shock stuff that those incels went through was because they came from an environment where it was normal for the male to be the authority figure, and they encountered situations where they felt that they were victimized and they weren't heard, and then they probably heard stuff like that, and then they came to the conclusion that there was a great big feminist lie going on, where the women were lording it over the men, basically, and the men weren't being heard. So they caught men's rights movement, and then they told a bunch of fibs about that and took things out of context, and so weren't taken seriously. And then they went too far, and you had Elliot Rodgers effect and stuff like that. Now, when you've got an Elon Musk character type around who was peddling to the incel market or the incel demographic, in a context where he's on Joe Rogan and stuff like that, long before all this Twitter stuff, saying he thinks that the world's a simulation, okay, and while he's peddling to that market, okay, he's basically giving a license through that sort of fascistic type of logic that goes with that borderline personality type, type of mindset, okay, or programming, where he goes around, he's telling all these young men who want to be like Elon Musk, because money and power, authority, they think it's the same thing, okay? And he goes, oh, the world's a simulation. Well, that guy knows all about computers. Maybe it is. Oh, it's a computer game? Cool, okay. All right, then. Okay, we're playing, okay, and there's aliens invading and stuff like that, reptilian shapeshifters. Let's go play Doom 3D and get out our fucking goddamn BFGs and go fucking, the women aren't giving us fucking any. Let's go down the shopping plaza and fucking, shoot a bunch of fucking alien women who are fucking ruining everything. And fucking then the next thing you fucking know is there's a bunch of dead bodies and they don't respawn because it's not a fucking computer game. So people like Elon Musk have blood on their hands from that alone. He's a man who's misused his position to peddle to a market of people who are experiencing that kind of shock that comes from a cultural shift. And the reaction has been devastating. Absolutely devastating. And the way that the New Age movement has misused Jungian psychology and misused Hegelian dialectics is extraordinary. Take, for example, the idea of a Vesica Pisces, or what they call divine union, stuff like that. You're not supposed to have two different people in the same place and call it a union, or what they call twin flame. Okay, that's not what that means. Okay? When you talk about Hegelian dialectics, or you talk about the Kierkegaard concept that's based on, you're talking about one individual coming to terms with the idea that their pre-existing worldview was insufficient for their comprehension of reality. Not fucking harvesting and going to the wrong head or whatever, and completely different people are your shadow or whatever else. Now, as for antithesis and stuff like that, your antithesis could be if you were a white woman from Australia, actually white's not the correct word, this physical body is actually mixed race. It's just due to the consequences of Australian history that wasn't acknowledged until, the last 10, 15 years or so. Okay? But mostly white. And so, actually, no. According to Nazi terms, not white at all. There isn't a single Bavarian there. Okay, yeah. There's not that there in the ancestry. There isn't a single Bavarian or Saxon. Okay, there were some English, but they weren't Saxons. Okay, they were Hibernos. Okay, yeah. They were Hibernos. So which basically is another word for Spanish. And so that's, in other words, a wog. You're looking at a wog. Okay, you might say it's a white woman. No, you're looking at a wog. Okay, a wog whose ancestors lived in different spots. Okay, so you're gonna be all racist like that, or part wog. So okay, we're gonna get into that. Okay, this face is this physical face is part Maori, part Chinese, a shit ton of Hiberno, so Welsh, Cornish, Irish, Lebanese, Kurdish, and Egyptian. And with the Cornish, that's Spanish, French, and Basque. But also, back in time, Lebanese and Kurdish. So the Lebanese and Kurdish became the Spanish, the French, and the Basque. Anyway, and then of course the Cornish. So because of the Huguenots. So so there's a long tradition of some family lines being opposed to the Vatican, for example. So and others not being opposed. So when it comes to 21st century families, if anyone comes from a family where they have more than one ancestor, so take for example people who fled Hitler. Some Jewish families in Europe converted to Catholicism to change their passports so they could get to Canada usually, but sometimes Australia and other countries as well. Sometimes a Jewish person married a Catholic person so that they could get overseas. And that's where that Concord Act came in. Okay, the Vatican was not going to prevent the massacre of the Jewish people. The Vatican was going to be, if you become a Catholic, you'll get your passport to leave. And so that's what happened. Okay? And there's so many different ways you can take that that's not even funny. Okay? Yeah. Okay, so if people who have more than one ancestry are already accustomed to the idea that throughout history, there has been these movements. You want to add, some people also believed about 14 generations ago there was a Cherokee ancestor as well. We're not actually sure about that. Okay, so but anyway, and also things like a lot of this stuff is like talk about hundreds of years old because Australian is the correct term. Okay, so when you look at that, when you look at that, any family that has that element of past as white or past as Catholic, type of thing, or past as white Catholic, or depending on what their circumstances were, they have that recollection is sometimes required in the 21st century as people do their family trees and discover that things are slightly more complicated than they realised. And they might find that one side of the family has almost exclusively British or European ancestors and the other side does not. And so one side's going, oh, but we're white, it's a white family. And the other side's going, well, we thought we were white, but actually we're not. And they get very, very confused. And they have to go through that shock. It's cultural shock because the normalization of whiteness, okay, without being rude, we're not shaming white people or what you call white people, European people, blonde people with blue eyes and stuff, for example. There's nothing wrong with them, okay? And you take them as individuals the same as you would anyone else. And there's some lovely, lovely people who are of that ancestry, just the same as you shouldn't shame rangers. Like Tim Minchin once said, only a ginger can call another ginger ginger, and they sure as shit shouldn't have tried to burn 45,000 gingers at the stake, because that was attempted genocide. Like in Europe, they attempted genocide on their own peoples before they started doing shit to others. And so when it came to like those colonial societies where migrants were coming from all kinds of places and the people mixed up, well, like in Australia, for example, it's pretty obvious. Like if you had 2,000 convicts and you had like 3 million Aboriginal people, and most of the convicts were men, take a guess what they were doing. Okay, Q Celtic Aboriginal Australia. Okay, yeah, and Q cousins of, and in this one's case, cousins of. So in some cases, not all. So if you look at it like that, it's very difficult for people with mixed race ancestry, people who had any Polish or Jewish or whatever World War II stuff going on, for them to go and be a racist and say that one race is better than the other, because if they do so, then it's like they hate themselves, and they can't do that. So they get a respect for more than one race. Okay, so even if they were in a society that was racist, so racist that their ancestors weren't allowed to admit who they were, or maybe have to see on their passport, or a Maori ancestor's relative or Pacquiao Maori ancestor's relative got killed because of mixed race marriage, and they had to get a new marriage and pretend they was white. Okay, things like that. You find that they can't be racist. That they can see things like there was discrimination. Okay, that there was a preference given to people of particular ethnic groups, but only if they were from a particular social strata, only if they were from a particular economic strata. So it wasn't just your gender or your race, it was your class as well. And so when you look into the history, you can see that. And so with that culture shock stuff, okay, things like people like Elon Musk, okay, we're going to say straight up, he's lied so much about everything that he's lied about his birthday. His birthday's not the 3rd of July 1971, okay? His birthday is probably around the 2nd of February, so the 2nd of, it feels more like the 2nd of October 1972, actually. But he's probably younger than he says he is, and not by much. Okay, either way, he's lying about his birthday. Okay, he's lied about a few other things as well. He's got $4 billion, not $200 billion, so he's not the world's richest man. You need to stop peddling that. So there was a little video there about Mr. Musk. He was what's the word? Some guy named Don Lemon or something like that. So that man appears to have dark skin. Okay, and Mr. Lemon was interviewing Mr. Musk, and they were talking about what's basically called white privilege, and Musk replied, and he said, oh, but everyone was a slave once. Everyone's ancestor has a story behind what they were a slave, and that's true. If you go further back enough, that was not the point. And you know what? Don Lemmon's reply was quite adequate. He turned around and said, yes, he agrees, and that everyone should be treated equal, yes, as an individual, and that's even true. However, Mr. Musk, you need to acknowledge that you have personally benefited because of your colour of your skin. And Mr. Musk couldn't see that. And it was bizarre because Mr. Musk was from a family in apartheid South Africa on the white side. And it's like, and that seed money that he had to start his businesses come from his father, Errol, which come from South African business money during apartheid. So they were afforded opportunity that the black South African was not. So yes, he was personally able to get an easier start in life because of the colour of his skin. That was an accurate historical factual statement. And it's amazing that Mr. Musk couldn't see that. So he probably has culture shock. Musk represents... It's the absolute epitome of culture shock, of total fucking denial, yet total fucking awareness. He's almost like he's totally aware, yet totally in denial. He's a very confused man, and he's very biased. Some of his statements that he's made strongly, it seems to be more about not his personal beliefs, but about his accommodation of beliefs, because he have to go and make a deal with the military and things like that to do his SpaceX and whatever. So you talk about like what happens there with people like that. He go and he do Hegelian synthesis of worldview by doing compromise of worldview. So we haven't done due consideration of what the merits, genuine merits and cons are. He done bias consideration. So a philosophical consideration outside of the biases of what's in your personal best interest or your financial best interest or the best interest of your company or whatever it might be is very different from a philosophical argument where you're just merely accommodating based on, oh, well, it seems like a good idea because I don't want to piss that person off because that's where the tucker's coming from. Okay? And a lot of history and if you talk about the politics of stuff, has been the second one rather than the first. Don't want to piss that person off because that's where the tucker's coming from. Okay, yeah, and so that's not actually a sign of people who are philosophically advanced. Okay, we're not seeing how Mr. Musk has sorted through his logical fallacies. Okay, we think he might be a delusional man on the drugs, like a lot of people think, because we're watching his behaviour and going, we can see why they say that. Okay, and it goes like that. So he's become a figurehead or a poster boy for the crucible of the consequence of capitalism, the consequence of apartheid, the consequence of hypermaterialism in the AI tech agenda. He's like the pool where all of that's gone into. Okay, he represents the pool. He's by no means the singular person. So when you look at a man like that, you can't do the Hitler thing, because Hitler was not on his own. Okay, he had a party around him who agreed with him and even gave him some of the ideas. They were all sitting around taking the amphetamines together. Okay, Hitler was sitting around with the Nazi party taking the amphetamines together. They were pissed off Weimar Republic soldiers who were getting high. They got given the amphetamines during World War I so they could keep fighting, and they were fucking drug addicts. So when you're talking about the situation of drug addicts taking over and doing cool in your country, okay, you need to take into consideration that those people are not level-headed. And you can see that, and people are commenting on that, okay? Okay? You need to see that status, money, power, authority is not the same thing. We talk to you, incel. Incel's out there. Status, money, power, and authority are not the same thing. Power is in your words. Power is in ideas. Power is in respect. Okay? The misunderstanding of feminism, okay, which was women should not be slave or property no more. What's wrong with that? Okay? It's like with Martin Luther King. Okay? What's wrong with Martin Luther King? Nothing. Okay? Martin Luther King's big dream was black man and white man could have dinner together. He's no criminal. What's wrong with that? There isn't a single thing wrong with that. If two people are grown adults and they want to be friends and they're not hurting anyone and they want to have dinner together, no crime. Okay? The absolute audacity of that man to do that on Martin Luther King Day. Make a big song and dance about how it's Martin Luther King Day. Forget about your fucking presidents and your fucking hierarchies and whatever else. It was Martin Luther King Day. The day to honour a man who had the guts and the temerity in the 1960s to stand up in a society that for some reason couldn't understand why two grown adults couldn't have dinner together without it causing a big fuss. Okay? And actually had the guts to say that, and for that to be considered important. Okay? We can't have a situation where the ideological masters of the global fucking culture through their Hollywood and whatever else is propagating through their YouTube constant images of a man with that fucking background behaving like that. We just can't do it. But you can't also say it's Elon Musk on his own. What about his tech bro party around him? What about Donald Trump? What about the downward spiral of American society since 9/11 and other places as well that pretended they were little America because of the infiltration of their minds using the propaganda ideology? What about people ignoring their own countries? So when Canoe say to you again, okay, Australia is sick of hearing about America, they are. But we need to push back to America and say, America, you're in culture shock. Your culture shock is that your culture isn't the perfect one. That it was just all style. That it wasn't substance. That this outsider has come along and infiltrated your society and mastered it and then totally trolled the shit out of you. And you're embarrassed, America. You're embarrassed that Mr. Musk has done that. You're embarrassed that the 4chaners have done that to you as well. You're embarrassed that the 4chaners came from your own country. American society wants to distance from that and ignore all the things it's done over the last, its entire history, but since September 11. Okay? Please. The Democrats are not better than the Republicans. Mr. Musk is a bad person, there's no question about it. Okay? But he's not on his own. They're making this shock and awe tactic and this confusion spell, so you make it about Mr. Musk. So you make it about Mr. Trump, but not about what they represent. And for that, you are giving them all the ammo they need to keep doing their shock and awe on you. They'll keep trolling you with the flame war of they've closed this department and that department or whatever the fuck they're doing, or this executive order, that executive order, and you'll miss the fucking point. Figure out what the point behind all of that is and go right for it, America. And then, maybe then, and only then, will Dr. Jordan Peterson, who said that God of darkness destruction can lead to great change, has potential in it, come true. But until you do that, okay, Dr. Jordan Peterson is a fucking incel-loving prick, okay, who fuel the flame war, okay, by talking over women, talking over everyone, thinking he knows fucking everything, sounding like he Mr. Important, okay? Oh, he wear a suit and tie, have doctor in front of his name. No one cares. Does he know what he's talking about? Sometimes. Not always. We're not here to play Dr. Jordan Peterson's game. We're not doing renewal here. We're not America. You are. And you need to deal with that, overseas people. You need to deal with that and stop making Australians responsible for your crap. Because every time you propagate that shit, dummies in Australia have to be corrected by people who are sick of having to correct them. We are sick to death of the attempted ideological dominance of incel-loving freaks. Your country not once has overthrown a single dictator in your own country or a single fascist. Not even once. You've got 250 years of people shooting each other and not once have you overthrown a dictator. Well, here's your fucking chance. What are you going to do? Sit around and fucking trying to get notoriety on YouTube? Or fucking go there and run the risk of being called a hypocrite by the Republicans who try to do the same thing on Democrats for a different reason? And have the Demis take out their fucking guns and go find Musk and shoot him in the face. Go on. It's your constitutional right, isn't it? You love your constitution so much? Why don't you prove the NRA correct by shooting the NRA lovers? Go on. Is that incitement to violence? Yes, if you fucking take it that way. What if you take it as rhetoric? Which is all you're bloody good for, isn't it, USA? We've been hearing it for fucking years. Rhetoric about how you want to overthrow Hitler. But look at you, scared shitless because you got Hitler in your fucking goddamn president chair right now. And Hitler fucking run around your APM. Are you going to overthrow them? Or are you just going to sit there complaining all day and doing populist fucking politics? Like Jesse Dollemore does populist politics. Like Dr. Jordan Peterson does populist politics. Like Midas Touch does populist politics. Like all you YouTube commentators from America are doing populist politics. But are you fucking pulling your fucking finger out? Are you taking it to the streets? Are you trying to unite both sides of the political spectrum and do what's in best interest of both of you? And what is truthful? Or are you just doing more political rhetoric? Are you guilty of the same crap they fucking are? Is there truth to that argument? Because as long as there's truth to that argument, they've got ammo against you. They won't listen. They won't listen to the stuff that they're wrong for doing this and that. They'll just find whatever fault you have and then they'll point it at you. So you need to have the problem is when you're fighting fascists, you need to be perfect and more perfect than them. And then when you watch their knives come out of jealousy, then you know you've got them. Know their game. Don't just fucking sit there and say, oh, it's a Hitler playbook. No, well, if you know the fucking Hitler playbook so well, then why aren't you playing it better? Why aren't you outgaming them? Or did you set them up in the first place? Have you been good Democrats and Republicans been playing tit for tat for so fucking long? You can't tell the difference between them. Maybe Juice Media in Australia got it right, and it's about shit and shit light. Go fuck yourselves.